And I want to give the brother honor for giving us that Nohotian lesson that segues into the common bloodline of the people of the Western Hemisphere. Thank you, brother. Respect all Panthers with all their work, and to the mothers, queens that gave us birth. That's why those sons got belly buttons. Birthmark. And that's why all Asiatic civilization is matriarchal, not patriarchal. So when we talk about spirituality, and we start going into what we call Asiatic and African history, and start talking a patriarchal mind about gods, etc., we in violation of nature. That's another reason why spiritually we're out of source, because we're violating nature. Oh, you got that right. Now, before 1492, we're Moors, Moorish, Almarati, Meru, Peru, etc. The mothers and fathers of civilization we are. And one thing that I think we need to look at when we make references to our Indians, that we have to respect that the children of Israel know your history very, very well, because they're ritual. And so when we look at Europeans, we don't look at them as a separate people in so much we should look at them as a hybrid offspring who have taken a political position to displace and then part of their actions with us is because of the first sultan of the Moroccan Empire of Babylonia, who declared the children of Israel slaves of Babylonian Moroccan Empire for 360 years in 12 generations, and that's the foundation of the karmic debt that you're paying right now. And that's also called the Great Masonic Secret. This is the reason why all of your governors on the planet Earth, all of your governments, all of the rulers wear this fez, even though they may do it in secret because they took your crown. So if you ever believe they don't know your history right and exact, there's nothing that we're going to say here on this panel, and nothing that's going to go unsaid that nations don't know, because that's what they learn, your real history. And what they have given, and the brother brought stuff in the nature when he was talking earlier, he's given us idol god worship, and we've adopted that and have missed the divine laws of Medu-Neter, which means Mother Nature. That's what Medu-Neter means, actually. Now, other point is, Noahuacan is the Olmec, which is Old Amexan. That is the thoroughblood, the thoroughbred blood of the Asiatics that you call Canaanites, Hittites, Hamites, Moabites, Moors, Lemurians. All right? Noahuacan is Olmec, Aztec, Inca, etc. That's Noahuacan together. Now, my grandmother called Blackfoot on my father's side. And she had a long braid that went past her backbone. And her eyes were so black they were blue. And I remember she used to sit me on her lap in the window on State Street and tell me some old things I didn't really necessarily understand, to be honest with you. But she used to always talk to me about the plants and stuff like that, and I always really just like to be near her, so she talked to me because I kept bugging her. Now on my mother's side, they're Cherokee, and so there's a tradition with our family calling ourselves Indians. So I used to ask Grandma, I used to ask her name is Eva, and I used to ask her about why they call us Indians, and she told me that we're not Indians. And she used to tell me what we were, but I honestly can't remember that part. But she used to remind me that they called us Indians because they were trying to take over our gold from the islands of the North States or something like that. It was, anyway, Asia. And because they were trying to take over the gold trade and spice trade near Tianyi, that you call Chinese China, that they thought when Pedro the Moor navigated Colombo's ship to the Atlantic Islands, which is where Haiti, the Caribe, Taino, where that area is, that's the Atlantic Islands, the Atlantic. All right, we call Atlantis, that is it. That they called us Indios or Hindi because they thought they reached what is known as Peror. Peror was named Hindustan about 3,000 years ago by the Moors from the Mauryan dynasty, the Nanda dynasty, and the Gupta dynasty that developed that metaphysical culture that you're speaking of. And of course, that's why they measure the linguistics of the languages in the language tree from what's called the 42 dialects of Sanskrit, or Sanskrita. All right? Now with our family, with the brothers, and I'm really appreciative of the family being here. When Philip II, after Pope Innocent, declared with the bull of 1511, when we had a rebellion on the land of flowers, which we call Florida today, and in Borican, that they call Richport or Puerto Rico, and that's because of our matriarchal culture. The gold and the silver was on the sisters, and the sisters would wear the gold around their necks, but it had no break-off point. In other words, it was molded on their necks and on their arms because it's a matriarchal system, and they would wear them in their turbans and behind the feathers of the jewels that were put in their turbans. And they murdered the women who take the gold, and they slaughtered them. They almost cleaned their island off. So they had to take Moors from around the surrounding islands and put them on Borican to re-people the island, and they used the sisters, the young women, as sex slaves.
Oh man, don't make me mad.
And this is the only reason why we have the different shades, but we are one and the same people. And the language is Latin, Moorish Latin. It's not Spanish. That's a misnomer. It's a fraud. Philip II declared in 1511 that all that is Moorish will be claimed by the Christian-dominating Church of Rome. Yeah, Church of Rome. And that the language no longer be called Moorish Latin, it would be called Spanish. And so what is Latin is called Spanish, but that is not the language, it is Moorish Latin. Then they call the Moors in the Southgate Latinos collectively of the Norothian, that is all the mixed tribes, Aztec, Olmec, Inca, etc., etc., etc. And they're all together Norothian, which is the lesson that the brother gave earlier. All right, so that is that connection. So understand, even when you go to Bambaataa, even now the family still maintains the Moroccan candles that we would do traditionally for rituals, and for the days when we pray, etc., etc. That's why the Moroccan candles are in all your botanicals. So we are one people. And I was appreciative of the brothers bringing us together because we are one family. However, we must understand that the problems that we're having here, even with the race thing, is a creation of German sociologists. There's only one race. The race is divided into nationalities. All right? But we're all Moors, and even Europeans are amalgamated Moors. This is what they learn in their secret societies, whether they're Knights of Malta, Knights Templars, Shriners, etc., etc., etc. So one thing we must do is get, again, back to the facts, and we need to learn to love instead of hate. And we need to know that, understand that some of the injuries that occur to us today, because everything we did was not necessarily good either. So don't come into your knowledge with an arrogant, self-righteous position. All right? Because we're both equally guilty. The deal is, because the truth is being told, we got to clean up, become spiritually upright, and love one another, come together. But being that the Albion sons have decided to place themselves as God of the planet, logically we must come together for self-defense. You understand? And the greatest weapon is truth yourself. Be that. Do that. Share that. And keep on with this. Thank you, brother.